Welcome all to our regularly scheduled meeting, the Town of Montgomery Planning Board for Monday, August 12, 2019. I believe there are some agendas left on that front desk. And can I see a show of hands for people who would like to make comments for items not on tonight's agenda? Okay, wonderful. So we can, yes, sir.
Yes, my name is Tom Walcott from the Village of Maybrook.
Hi, Tom.
The Maybrook Community Center, Bose Community Center, we never received a copy of the Sailfish final environmental review, and I was wondering if there was a reason why.
I believe we had put it online and we had sent it to the Montgomery Library and Walden Library.
Correct.
Right.
Is there any reason why Maybrook didn't receive a copy?
No special reason why we left them out. We had decided a while ago that that's where we were going to send them. We may have done the same for the draft environmental impact statement.
No, that went to, for Medline, that went to all three branches.
But not Sailfish.
Not Sailfish. We didn't receive a copy in Maybrook. As far as I know, we're still in the town of Montgomery.
Yeah, I believe there's one at Town Hall here also, the FEIS. I'm sorry that we didn't send one to Maybrook. I think we used the same, we sent them to the same locations we did the original document or the DEIS for Sailfish, so we just followed up at the same locations. Okay. Anyone else? Yes.
I have a question. Tomorrow's meeting?
Yes.
So when I was here for some of the public hearings for the Gratiot Road and 17K project, there was an engineer here and people were asking questions and he was immediately answering that. Will that be the same format for
No.
tomorrow night?
No, the format for the draft environmental impact statement will be to take public comment.
No answer to question?
No, we won't be, there, maybe if there was on process, a question on what's gonna happen next, something like that we can address, but we will not be going into back and forth over the different aspects of the job.
Okay, and then how long will you be able to speak for? What's the timing?
5 minutes.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Anyone else for comments? Okay, can I see a show of hands here, people who are here to, for Alicia Holdings or ASAP? Okay, because you're scheduled second, and I think Blue Water is definitely scheduled first, and I think we'll need to spend quite a bit of time. We may have to try to fit you in at some point, because you're due at 7:45, but we will need to start Sailfish first. Excuse me, or Blue Water. Okay, I just wanted to announce that. So this is a reconvening of a public hearing that's been open on and off since February for Blue Water Industrial Partners LLC Project Sailfish. The final environmental impact statement has been available, I think, since last Monday, in electronic form, and also at the Walden Library and Town Hall and the Montgomery Library. Now, you'll be able to hand in written comments or submit written comments on this project until noon on the 27th of this month. Just wanted to make everybody aware that all comments, whether written or verbally communicated, will be addressed, okay, or will be looked at. So with that, I'll hand the meeting over for a few minutes to consultants for Blue Water if they want to just update us on the status of the project at this time.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. My name is Dave Everett. I'm legal counsel for Blue Water. I have with me tonight Chuck Etchik from Langen Engineers, who's the project engineer. We also have Steve Butte and Don Chase, who are the principals of Blue Water here as well. As you noted, this is a continuation of the public hearing on the site plan and the special exception use permit. And as As you also mentioned, the FEIS was recently accepted as complete. Included in the FEIS were some updated site plans that we had prepared in response to public comments, as well as comments from your consultants and board members and other agencies. There were a number of beneficial changes that were made to the site plan as a result of that process. And we thought it would be helpful for Chuck to just sort of run over some of those changes quickly before we get to public comment, if that's okay with you.
Sure.
Okay, thank you.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. For the record, my name is Charles Utschi with the firm of Langen Engineering. As Dave indicated, actually, as you look at this board, the changes that we've made have been very subtle. And so this looks very much like the board we presented some 6 months ago for all intents and purposes. But there are subtle changes. Some of those changes include reconfiguring the main entrance. There was a concern about the crossing of traffic at that location, so we've modified that design. We have also made some minor modifications to the entrances. There's an entrance that was originally proposed at 17K and 747. We've evolved those based on comments that we've got from DOT. And so again, kind of subtle changes, same locations, but the design configuration is a little different. We have modified the grading substantially. In the DEIS, we represented that there was about 130,000 cubic yards of material being exported off-site, which resulted in significant truck traffic. We've revised that grading, and now the anticipated export is only about 12,000 yards, which is a substantial improvement. A couple of the other things that we've done as it relates to comments from this board, your staff, and the public relate to stormwater. We have incorporated permeable pavement into the design, which has helped increase the amount of infiltration that we've got. We have also modified one of the primary stormwater management basins. Here to be a wet pond. It gives us the opportunity to store significantly more volume. It helped us do two things. It helped us address one of the concerns from the fire department. They were looking for the ability to have more water available on site for fire protection. So that pond converted to a wet pond allowed us to do that. We almost doubled the amount of water that could be available for firefighting. But it also dealt with the concern about stormwater and controlling the extent that we can the rate of runoff from the site. We also have supplemented the landscaping. We've done so by the 747 entrance. There are two residential houses there that are actually in the adjoining town. There was a concern about the potential impact of the traffic noise there, and we have supplemented the screening in that location. We have also significantly increased the amount of screening on the west side of the building where the truck court is at. Again, concern over noise and visual impact to the adjoining neighbors along Maple Avenue. So there's been a substantial increase in the amount of landscaping that was proposed in those locations. And then, let's see, lastly, the DEIS represented that the Haber House would be torn down, demolished. We've actually worked out a solution to that. The Haber House will be preserved. It will be relocated on the site about 60 or 70 feet from where it currently sits. And we're working with SHPO right now on the details of what that relocation looks like, but it will be preserved. So those are the basic changes. There's been other subtle changes to address some of the comments from your staff, technical comments, but those are the significant modifications that we've made through this process.
Thank you. All right, we'll open up the floor for questions for a little while. Then we may have to adjourn, go to ASAP, and then come back. We'll stick with it tonight. So if you please, if you'd like to make a comment, please identify yourself for the record. There's a stenographer here to keep the minutes, and address the board, and tell us what's on your mind. So, anyone would like to start? Who'd like to start? Yes. Okay.
Well, thank you.
Ray, could you make sure that the mic is on, please?
This
Hi.
mic, yes.
Good evening, is it on? Where is the? Where is the button? Oh. Hello? Okay. The first, I have a question, and this is procedural. So I think, Richard, this is something that you may be able to answer. Last time we were here, you said that you had deemed the FEIS complete and available.
You have a spare mic?
It must have gone off.
Is it me?
It may be the batteries, maybe.
Can I just yell?
No, I.
I've been told I have a big mouth.
Not big enough.
No.
Hi, I'm Barbara Lerner. I'm the owner of.
Still not
Yep.
on.
Still not on. Is this better? Okay. Is it just me?
You wanna try this? Why don't you try this one?
Okay. Sorry about that.
No, it's okay.
You don't mind me so close?
No, not at all.
Okay. I was curious, what does it mean when you said last time that you've deemed the FEIS complete and available for review? Does this mean that the board accepts the content and validity of the applicant's proposed solutions?
The FEIS is the applicant's proposed mitigation. The real document that will be the finding statement.
Okay, so this is, you still have the finding statement even though there's the FEIS?
Yes,
That's the
correct.
end?
The finding
Okay.
statement is the last part of the secret process.
Okay, thank you. Has the board reviewed the total content, including site plans and SWIP? Because it appeared from the document, as I was reading through it, that the planning board engineer, Andrew, that you haven't completely reviewed the SWIP and all of the records. If you haven't completely reviewed and analyzed all of this, how can you declare completeness, as these are both very critical areas in terms of relating to the environmental review?
Additional review needs to go on for site plan for the stormwater, the sewer, the site plan, et cetera, engineering technical details.
Okay,
As far as completeness under seeker, I thought it was complete.
okay. The FEIS in some sections indicates the potential transfer of the wastewater treatment plant to the town. Has this been approved by the town? And if not, who has the lifetime responsibility for operation, maintenance, and liability for discharge? Is it the applicant? Is it is it USAA who they're turning this over to after the approval process? Is it the tenant? Is it a future tenant? And do we, as taxpayers, have any say in the future acquisition or transfer of the wastewater treatment plant to the town?
The FEIS indicates that the developer will offer the plant to the town, but the town has no obligation to accept it ever. At any time that the town board deems it in the public interest to accept it, they can do that, but there's no obligation to do that, and that'll be a decision made by the town board at the time. In the meantime, it'll be completely privately run.
Does the public have the option to counter the town's decision to acquire the wastewater treatment plant?
It depends.
Do we have say?
It depends if the town creates a special sewer district out there, and then those people within the district, I think, would have some say. But again, that's a town board matter.
Okay. And can you confirm that the site plan and special exception use will be continued beyond 8/27? This is an incredibly lengthy document. Comparing the DEIS to the FEIS is problematic in the way the two documents have been presented and corrected. Will we have additional time, or is this really quite a bit of a rush? It was, the document was made available on 8/2 to 8/27, that's 25 days total for over 4,000 documents in both the FEIS and the DEIS. And you have to compare one to the other. You can't just use the final, because there are changes, there are things that aren't in both and that aren't redlined.
I mean, we had set forth that time, seeker, seeker only requires 10 days. And, it's been extended from the second to the, it's 25 instead of 10.
So you feel 25 days is an adequate amount of time for 4,000
Well-
pages of changes, corrections, cross-referencing, and new studies? Because there are 3 new studies within this.
Our consultants have been reviewing these documents, both the DEIS and the FEIS. The FEIS we received around May 10th. It took 3 months to go through all the documents to make sure that all of the matters were addressed, but except site plan and SCU permit. Before that, we had adopted a scope back in June of last year. It took from June to December to get the DEIS complete, and then we had a hearing. So the entire project has been under our constant review with an engineering firm very thorough with a lot of disciplines since June of 2018. So I believe this board will feel confident when the time comes that everything will have been addressed to the best of our abilities.
My question largely concerns, I think it was Appendix K perhaps, that's the redlined version that shows the changes. All of those changes are not in that appendix. But that's okay, we can continue. Once you issue the secret findings, we should be able to continue comment on the site plans, correct?
I don't know that the board can project a timeline on that.
Okay.
The finding
Okay.
statement will absolutely be the very first thing to be done. Permits
Okay.
can't be issued until there's findings. Whether they will happen simultaneously or staggered, we don't want to say.
Okay. I didn't recall seeing the Montgomery IDA listed as an involved agency. Did I miss something? Since an application went to the IDA, I didn't notice them. I may be incorrect, I mean, it's so voluminous. Just to,
Involved agencies in the FEIS.
it is in the FEIS?
Yes.
Okay, then it's my oversight. I know that Blue Water is here, and I'm glad you're here to respond. But I don't know who Blue Water Industrial Partners, they were the original applicant. In March, I was notified that there was new contact information, and the new company was called Blue Water Property Group. This is all fine, this is normal. But I don't know why they didn't bother to tell the planning board back in March that they were going under a new company name. I know it's not illegal, it's not improper, but it is unsettling. As I go through the Blue Water Industrial Partners and Blue Water Property Group, the information available online, there isn't that much. The relationships between the companies, they tout being founders of various REITs, but I can't trace all of this information back. Blue Water Industrial Partners doesn't have an online presence anymore, and if I remember correctly, their original site listed projects either under advisement or in process. Those no longer exist because Blue Water Industrial Partners takes you to Blue Water Property Group. The old company, the new company only has each person's resume and 2 new partners, but no completed projects, no anticipated projects, and just a listing of the various companies that they have worked for in the past. Each company that they list is a REIT. It's a real estate investment trust. They're not developers. So my presumption is that there's no practical experience, no completed projects, and no track record. It leaves me uncomfortable, though I know everybody has to start from ground zero. Everybody needs a starting point. I don't want to be the guinea pig. In volume 1 on page 2-13, They state the principals have developed over 25 million square feet of modern industrial space with $7 billion in historical transactional volume. But I can't find a single project completed. With 25 million square feet of industrial space developed, you would think that there would be one project listed, 2 projects listed, something. Like I said, none of this is illegal, but none of it passes the smell test. It does appear to demonstrate a lack of transparency on the part of the applicant. It may be an oversight, which I'm hoping, but I would certainly rather be inviting a company with a track record into my backyard as opposed to a development company who is interested in flipping a project to somebody else, to somebody else, to somebody else, to an end user who the town has no input on what they do. For example, there was a discussion of bulk storage. To understand bulk storage, it means that you have a tank. They may not have a 500 or 900 or 1,000 gallon tank. For example, for oil, when you have that much oil, it's regulated. And I think the threshold for many things is 999. They could have 100 pallets of 5-gallon pails of sulfuric acid. You don't know what the end user is going to carry. And as palletized material, it is considered product. It is not considered by DEC standard bulk storage. That is a very big concern of mine. Reviewing the details of this project is like peeling an onion. Every layer reveals something new. The DEIS was over 4,000 pages and deemed complete after roughly a month to our knowledge, but you tell me it was longer. There are changes to the SWIP, to traffic, and these constitute material changes to the plan and affect site plan approval and special exception use. With this enormous volume of new information, and by their own admission, the applicant undertook additional new studies specifically in these areas, it's impossible for the public to review all of the new information and compare it to the original in a short period of time. There should be a supplemental environmental impact statement required to address these new comments. Since they are new, they are materially different from what was originally presented, and it's justification to ask them to do that. If you close the written comment period for the FEIS on August 28th, as you have previously, 27th? 27th, that's right. You will be denying the public adequate time to review and compare these documents. Simply calling this an amplification and clarification of the DEIS, as Blue Water frequently does throughout this document, grossly misstates that the facts are new studies and that this is new information and not a clarification. As stated by both residents and experts, this project calls for the removal and destruction of old-growth forest. It's one of the few remaining continuous areas between Stewart State Forest and the Catskills and provides an important wildlife corridor. The applicant's common response is that they're leaving 100 acres of undisturbed vegetation. What they're not saying, except in one limited comment that's on volume 2, page 2-164, is that this is regulated wetland. They can't develop this. They're implying it that they are doing this because they are good stewards of the land. With their most common response, the project has been designated to limit adjacent area impact to the greatest extent practical. Not possible, but practical. The applicant has ignored the impact of the removal of trees, shrubs, and grassland and the impact of this on stormwater absorption. They've ignored the intrinsic value of wetlands on the quality of our water and the impact of winter salt, paved areas, and hotspots have on uncontained runoff.
Excuse me, Barbara, do you have a lot more? Because I'm sure there's plenty of people who
Not
want to-
terribly. It doesn't appear that the applicant knows the difference between wetland and upland, and that they don't live in the same environment, wildlife. Yet they continually state that 82 acres of disturbance and 50 acres of development will have no impact. They claim the increase in traffic will have no adverse impact, yet it's stated that the intersection of 747 and 17K is the second highest rate of accidents of all like intersections in New York State. They claim traffic will be directed to 84, and they obviously don't understand the importance of time and money. Drivers and people will go where it's the most convenient. They feel the timing of the lights will lessen the impact on our driveway, but their studies are of limited scope and time, very often only 1 to 5 days. How can shifts in excess of 800 people have little impact on driveways that are roughly 1,000 feet away? They already acknowledge 400 plus cars going past our driveway at peak times. The project doesn't fit the IB zone. Pushing the change to IB to I2, you're saying the town board screwed up twice before they changed it from I2 to Gateway Overlay and then to IB. Maybe we should really redefine what industrial use is and have a separate classification for warehouse within our zoning code. What will a project like this do to the community at large? Quality of life and health. This will change this gateway into Montgomery forever and set a precedent for all future warehouse development. Coming to Montgomery, what is the answer going to be? You can do anything you want here. Rules? We don't need rules. Thank you.
Thank you, Barbara. We'll take, it's almost 8 o'clock, so why don't we adjourn this meeting until a few minutes, well, till ever we need it this evening, and if we'll reconvene the hearing for ASAP. So you would like to fill us in on the project, Lisa and Matt?
Sure.
Okay. All right, you're welcome to use this mic if you'd like. I don't know if it'll move much for you, but.
Just for the very beginning, sorry, this is awkward, everyone. Marissa Weiss of Jacobowitz and Gubitz for the applicant. We are here this evening to continue the public hearing on our scrap metal recycling facility application. We have submitted an entirely new submission in the last week, and that includes a revised site plan, a wastewater disposal plan, a highway right-of-way improvement plan, a revised facility operations plan, an operational SWIP, a written response to all the public comments that have been received up until this date, a specific response to the Orange County Department of Planning letter for their 239M, L, and N review, a letter regarding the existing scale on the property, a follow-up letter regarding the noise decibel levels from the car crusher that are to be located on the property, as well as a follow-up lighting plan.
Thank you.
No problem.
I'm Matt Town with Willingham Engineering for the applicant. Just a few other items that we're waiting on. I think I told you last time we submitted to the DOT for the minor commercial driveway entrance, and we're still waiting to hear from them. We've reached out again, but no response. We've completed the phase 1 archaeological study. We're waiting for the archaeologist to prepare the report, but per verbal confirmation, he didn't find any sensitive areas. So we'll submit that to SHPO for the secret process. As Marissa said, we submitted an operational SWIP that's being reviewed by Riverkeeper now. And
Okay.
It's going to go to the DEC after that. They want to review it. So that's in the works. We've coordinated with the Walden Fire Company. We have a site meeting with them next Tuesday to figure out what's needed for adequate fire suppression at the site. We've also coordinated with the Orange County Department of Environmental Facilities regarding their approval on the project, and we're awaiting hearing back from them. So at this point, that's the update.
Okay, thank you. This is a continuation of a public hearing. Anyone in the audience has a question or like to make a comment on ASAP? You can come up and please use a mic, or if you're loud, you can help your voice carry. Just please identify yourself for the record, please. How you doing?
Hi there, I'm
Good.
Stephen Tice.
Hi, Stephen.
Mic working?
This one should work fine, yeah.
This one's working? Okay.
Yeah, and you can address the board, so.
Okay, I'm
Basic-
addressing to the board here today about, I'm sorry, my baby told me this.
That's okay.
I had to go to the police department and have harassment filed.
We can't hear you, I'm
harassment
sorry.
filed. Can you hear me better?
Yes.
Okay, I had to go to the police department and file some harassment charges or a call against Ed Alicia here behind me. And I don't appreciate making a comment behind my back when he left the room and came around behind me there. Which I have a foil for the report for that from last week, and then I had to make another report for his harassment earlier today when he started continuing on calling me.
I understand.
Now, I was going through everything with the zoning and everything.
Okay.
And with the recycling and hand recovery facility includes, we're going through here, and there is something about how even dust, debris, and we already have a problem with their dust blowing over into a yard. Summer's dry, wind picks up, they're north of us, get a north wind, dust blows into our yard. Who knows what debris in the future? And on here it says for the maximum shall be no greater than the following 57 decibels from 7 a.m. to 10 p.m. That's line H.
Right in our zoning.
Right in your
Yep.
zoning.
Yep.
When my mother called me this morning, telling me to come over, she has her windows up and she's trying to sleep, 9 o'clock this morning. I can even play it for you. You can hear them beating out metal, yelling. They put all their work back over towards there, disturbing my mother.
Okay.
The noise problem is an issue. I took a decibel reading and a video recorded also showing I'll get up over 70 decibels in her front yard with the noise that's already coming from them.
Okay.
And I just want to address that with the amount of noise. It's just been a disturbance with everything. And you don't have to worry about any debris or anything that's going to be blowing over to us.
Okay.
And I was just wondering with the stormwater, do they have anything, because they've been over there and they've been using a lot of pressure washing the metal racks and everything. Is there any risk of paint chips that get washed down into the river or anything, because they've been using pressure washer out in their yard? Just want to make sure that no paint chips get washed into the water.
Pressure washer. Very good. Okay, thank you.
And
And I'm his mom.
Hi,
As a
Mrs. Todd.
support.
How are you?
And I got a letter last week from the town of Montgomery that they would like to come and inspect my place, the fire department and so on. My husband passed away 2016. The machine shop is closed. It's only old machine in there. We tried to clean up, and we're closing the auto sales dealership business also. So we have a few cars that can happen, but it's in a process. It's in a
Okay,
process to
so
close it.
you have an old machine shop and
Yes,
an
yeah.
old car, you used to sell
Yes.
cars out. Yes, I see the signs,
decades
yeah.
ago,
Yes.
decades
I see the
ago.
signs up there, 'cause I
That
go
we've
by
been
every day.
trying,
Yeah, we've been
and
there
it's-
since the 70s.
Long time.
Yes,
long
we've been there 40 years, and after,
That all got
I never
resolved.
got,
But we never,
this was a retaliation. And I got a phone call from some gentleman that if I wanna sell my house, and how many bedrooms and all that, I said, yes, I wanted to sell it, and he wanted to discuss, the rooms and everything, and I had said that, I will not answer a phone,
No,
which I don't know the person.
Good idea. Yeah, I don't,
I looked up the phone number and it came up to Chapel Field's fax line, actually,
And,
that was called for. Which was extremely
yeah,
strange. I don't
all of
know.
these things that, the issues you're having really aren't part of our purview, except the noise and the dust and all of that, which we will look into. As far as Mr. Farr sending you a letter,
Yes,
I'm
it
sorry, I
is
don't know
cleared
anything about
up.
it.
They look
That
back
is
and-
cleared up.
they cleared
Okay, good,
They
good.
called,
All
they
right.
called me
I
back and
just
said,
wanna say that I wanna be peaceful. I lost my husband, his father,
Yeah, I'm sorry.
and I had open heart surgery twice. So I would appreciate very much you gentlemen and ladies that would take that into consideration.
Okay, sorry to hear
And for my son, he's speaking up for my behalf.
Mhm.
And thank you so much for
Thank you.
hearing us out.
Thank you. Anyone else on the lease ship? Yes.
My name's Tom Walcott.
Hi, Tom.
From the village of Maybrook. The last meeting that I attended, these folks were at their neighbors of this proposed project. There was a discussion of whether it was properly permitted, the scale in the concrete pad. And that's
Yes.
my question to the engineer or to the attorney, because
Sure.
at that
That's some
time,
information.
nobody had any answers.
Yes, no, we didn't.
Unfortunately, the property owner wasn't there at the last meeting, so I'll stand this way. Wasn't there at the last meeting, so we didn't want to provide any response until we
Sure,
actually
you
had
got-
spoken
I'm
with
gonna
them.
speak on that. I'll speak on that when it's my turn.
Okay, sure. But as you are aware, I think the board is aware, but I'm not sure if the public's aware, my firm was not engaged at the time that this scale was installed on the property, so we were playing a little bit of catch up. There was another attorney, they were not represented by attorney for the site plan application because the site plan application amendment and special exception use permit had not been filed
Okay.
when that had been installed on the property. The property owner, unfortunately, it's not a building, so he didn't think he needed a building permit, and that's not, ignorance of the law is not an excuse, but we are trying to take responsibility for that. In the interim, there was another attorney that was representing this application in the very beginning, in its beginning stages. He's since retired, and we have taken on the responsibility since then. So our firm was not involved at any point until, I think it was June when we were engaged, so just for everybody's clarification. With regard to what exactly happened, as I said, the gravel, which was gravel to re-gravel the site, it was just worn out, but the gravel was needed to support the scale. It was installed within all of the required setbacks and meets all of those zoning code provisions. There just was no building permit at the time. And we understand that that should have happened. Mr. Schmidt did come to the site apparently in the fall before we were engaged, before I think even Mr. Donnelly's firm had been engaged, the previous attorneys. Mr. Schmidt was very aware. He told the property owner that he should technically have a violation, but he was going to hold off on that violation in acknowledgement that the site plan application amendment and the special exception use, which would be using that scale, was forthcoming very soon. And he said as long as the scale was not used for any component, which it wasn't going to be, at that point it's not used for heads up, the existing site, that it was okay, but he would be monitoring it. And Mr. Schmidt, I submitted the letter that describes all of that information to Mr. Schmidt, and I did provide his email response to the board, which is basically, he agrees with the characterization, and that's where it's at. But I told him if we wanted to discuss further, even outside of the planning board, that we're more than willing to do that. We understand that we did mess up, but we are trying to take full responsibility for that as we continue our site plan application.
So his ruling then was he'd hold off on a violation and you were not to use the
Not
scale.
to use the scale until the
Until-
special exception permit and the amended site plan approval, which took all of that into account,
Okay.
actually was obtained. And the SWIP as well that has been submitted to, as we said, your keeper DEC and your board, also takes all of those additional site amendments into account. So
Okay.
everything that's in every document now is what's currently on the site or what's going to be added. So
Okay.
everything's taken care of at this point.
Thanks.
Mhm.
Did you want to,
If there's nobody else, I'll say a few words.
anyone else like to talk? Yes, Susan?
Mm-hmm.
All the way up to here, yeah.
Okay, kids, here I am. I I just have an issue. Walt Schmidt was hired during my tenure. And when the neighbors at the last meeting asked about, the things that went in without a building permit, and they had been to town hall to look for them, I'm just questioning Walt Schmidt's, integrity, capability, whatever, because August 6th, the attorneys for this wrote an explanation about ignorance of the law, which he already stated. And then August 8th, they forwarded an email from Walt Schmidt explaining this. He wrote his email August 7th. So August 6th, they say, oh, it was a mistake, but he looked at it. But there was no record of Walt Schmidt having looked at it. He just wrote an email to cover whomever. I just have a problem with this. Walt Schmidt filed a complaint against Crossroads Restaurant for having a tent outside. So this is just...
We'd like to stick on...
I know.
And I mean, we have nothing...
But the planning board uses Walt Schmidt's data to make its decision. And I say there's something wrong with what you have in your hands.
We really don't.
And why is it coming up?
To briefly respond with the timeline issue there. We submitted a letter that described what the applicant's understanding of the meeting with Walter was, and I very clearly and tried to explain it that way to Mr. Schmidt in the letter, which also went to the planning board. We never said that this is verbatim what he said. This is what the applicant's understanding of the meeting was, which is why it was sent to Mr. Schmidt so he could corroborate that. He did corroborate that via email in his response, which is what I provided to the board. So other than that, there's really nothing that I think this board can comment about his integrity-wise. This is the timeline that we've been given. This is how we're trying to remedy the situation. Thank you.
Anyone else with a comment?
I'd just like to make one comment. I find it very strange that they met all the setbacks and all the requirements that's required by the planning board, and yet they said they were ignorant of obtaining a permit. They met all the setbacks, but they didn't apply for the permit. It doesn't make sense.
We're far enough from the property line that I don't know if it was necessarily a choice to do that, in that we were like, oh, we need to be 130 feet from the property line. That was specifically chosen. We just knew they were within those setbacks that would need to happen. I don't think it was a numerically, I don't know off the top of my head.
I know
it has to be 100 versus 130. We made sure we were at 130. They just made sure that they were far away from the property line.
I know as a homeowner, if I want to put a 12 by 12 shed down, I have to get a building permit. It's that simple. I mean, how ignorant can somebody be?
I understand. We're trying to take full account of it.
Yeah, Sheree?
Thank you for recognizing me. Am I loud enough to be heard back here, or should I walk up?
I hear you.
Okay. First, I'd like to say in the last planning board meeting, in a discussion and a question I had, and I termed something as a gypsy truck. I was corrected by you in understanding why that you stated that you do not discriminate. I would like to make my peers in this board understand that I was using the Merriam-Webster's dictionary application of the term gypsy as being nomadic. So I feel that I was maybe framed in a light by that response that doesn't reflect who I am. We call things gypsy moths and we don't get corrected. But I know
That's an old term, we understand.
I understand, but it was made in the public and that's not the point. You got it. I wanted my peers to know I have nothing like that. I actually was in Europe and had the pleasure to party with the people. Now going on.
All right.
When it has to do with this particular project, I did read that note and reply in consideration. My question to you is, this is the applicant's first business?
It's a secondary business.
Is it his first time ever engaging in business?
No.
My question is to be answered, please, by the board of representatives. Yes or no?
No.
No. So he is aware of due processes when it comes to business, correct? He also is going into a property that resides within the town of Montgomery and has already gone through the due process. So the fact that you can understand that you were not involved, but you have a businessman who surely has not been born yesterday as to the requirements of the due process as required by towns. So to go forward and to lay a scale without knowing, not even the permit, but application for the activity of an SUU is beyond reason and does not suggest transparency and honesty. It is excusable that he doesn't understand that it was a building, but what's not excusable is that he preempted the boards in this town who they represent in our laws and seemed to be without regard to them, and that is wrong. Two, I have a question, aside from that. You speak that when you bring these vehicles in, that you're going to put them on the scale, correct? In this scale, you state in one of the letters is 130 feet from the property line, am I correct? And it is a scale that is under the reclaimed use of the site, right, the scrap component. In our law, which is section, give me a second here. So you acknowledge first that the scales was re-vetted and placed 130 feet from what is a residential district.
No, it's industrial.
It isn't, their home is industrial?
Yes. Yes, it's an I-3, just like this site.
Okay, so there are no residents near that, so that takes that away, because the setback is 75 feet and doubled if it was next to a residence, so that was gonna be the inquiry. The next question is you're going to be, it is stated that the noise that was incurred was due to the scales being implemented on the site, and that should not happen. And it was stated that because the vehicles will be driven up onto the scale. My question is, if a caravan brings in a car that is broken and does not run, how is it possibly to be quietly driven upon a scale? What process is to be used?
We're gonna answer that question. Is that the last one?
No, sir.
Okay, keep going.
You also state that you are separating the tires and the batteries. My question to you is, what are the, since we are not privy to what you've just done, and this is a public hearing, so these are questions that may be answered, that you're going to collect tires. Figuring at 250 cars a year, 4 tires is approximately over 1,000 tires. What is the process that you're going to secure them with to keep them from vectors? And also the batteries that you take out of the car, how many do you plan on storing? Because right now I can't find anything in our zoning law that speaks to battery storage. Also, it also states in the law, so you understand, because obviously somebody doesn't understand the law who's slightly problematic. I'd like those answers when you can, okay? Also, a woman, her name was, it was an inquiry, and I am remiss in the fact that I didn't catch the original title of the document, but I believe it's on page 2 of the document, and the, it is from, I believe, the Planning Board of Orange County. And Miss McLeod, is that right, McLeod?
Jennifer McLeod, Orange County Planning Department.
Yes, Orange County Planning. She asked a very specific question that asks you how many in a week, a month, and a year. And the answer basically came back as, we don't know, because we don't know. However, according to the document in 130-40-30.36 and the waste effect, right, it talks about that it does require you to state very clearly, and here I can read it if the board's aware of it, in 130-40-30.36, recycling, handling, and recovery facilities, including recyclable handling, the recovery facility is requirements. Point 2 is a facility operations plan must be submitted indicating the time of operation, expected quantities of material to be received and process to be used. This plan must include an outline of throughput, duration, operations and maintenance schedules, equipment process including distribution of product, as well as the time frame for other materials will remain on site. This is all part of the process, and to this date, no document that I can find in the records approach that. And even the planning board asking it, your representatives and attorneys stated, we don't know. But that is required, and that is not a proper or valid answer, because this is a process that is legit. Also, there it is in that same section, point 3, is a description of the source quantity and quality of the materials proposed to be processed. Again, I asked about the batteries. I understand the cars and how you're going to regulate them at what was told, I thought, the last meeting, maybe 2 carriers a week. Was that correct?
For cars?
Yeah, for the auto recovery.
For, it could be cars or scrap metal, the same, they could, either one.
Okay, great. I got it.
I'll wait till you finish all of them, and then we'll address them all.
Okay, there's points, and we look forward to that clarification. As far as I've already said, the waste tire and processing facilities, under that section, the owner-operator must have established markets for the timely removal of the tires. Have you established for the board of the town the specific market that these tires are going to go to? That's part of the process. So you do have a vendor that will take the tires away?
Yeah, that's an easy one, absolutely.
Oh, that's goodness. All right. I also would like to bring up the fact that eagles were discussed in the previous meeting, and they're pretty important. In reading on the DEC site, and I don't know if that's part of the process that's been done. So in mentioning the eagles, I put it out and requested to find out that in fact people have been sighting eagles, both near Benedict Park, along the river park over near Bailey Road, and somebody near Dam sighted them. And this statement that I'm concerned about is a person had seen these eagles in their areas, and reading on the DEC site that they are territorial, but they are incredibly disturbed. And I have photocopies of the DEC site stating that disturbances such as noise, activity, and other events, it lists, do disturb them, and is an environmental change. And that being they're very territorial, they will actually leave an area and they will begin to eat or attack not eat, but attack other eagles for their territory. So if we are eliminating a territory that might, and I do not know all the reasons why they've left, but are sited along the river, have we done anything to notify the DEC of the appearance and then the disappearance, so we may be able to understand that cause in order to protect what is no longer an endangered species, but a threatened species?
I'll answer this one.
Okay.
We've been occupying the property now. First of all, let me introduce myself. My name is Edward Alisea. Everyone calls me Eddie. So if you guys have a question after the hearing, if you want to come up to me directly, I'll be happy to answer anything. I have business cards and other contact information that will be given out. So to answer that question specifically, that whole area has been changed for the last 5 years. It's completely, because it was basically a dead zone. It had been abandoned for 8 years, so it was basically life after people. You know, it had essentially, you know, been not used. So it was just, yes, there was bears, I'm sure. There was college kids hanging out on the property. There was different wildlife on the property. In regards to the eagles specifically, we have pictures of the eagles. We still see the eagles. There was a bear on our property recently. I've seen turkeys. I've seen all kinds of wildlife. I know for a fact that our property was used as hunting grounds for a lot of locals, you know, because it was empty and abandoned for so long. So as far as, you know, changing the landscape of the property, well, it's being used for its intended use. We purchased the property as commercial industrial usage for certain activities. That's why we purchased it. Had we not, you know, basically read exactly what we needed the use for, we would have bought a property elsewhere. So this project is something that we plan on doing. We want it to be metal recyclers. My current business is shelving. We basically recycle shelving. So we do about 3 million pounds a year of basically cut off steel, and we do it from site and also off site, you know, on demo jobs. And we're using third-party scrap processors to process the steel. So this has been always a natural evolution for Heads Up to do it ourselves, to process our own steel. So, you know, that's basically our motivation. And I really don't have a good answer. I don't know what answer you're looking for in regards to wildlife. but
They're
that's,
not general wildlife, they're not considered an endangered species or
Well,
threatened species.
yeah.
And what all I'm asking is, and I don't have the answer to this, I just found it an interesting inquiry, and my question is, has the DEC been contacted to involve the understanding that you have
Yeah.
sighted eagles, and people have said they are no longer sighted? Now, they are territorial and they will move, they have up to 3 nests.
well, we have pictures of the eagles just because they're beautiful, and we took a picture, you know, of the eagles,
So you
and
see them
I got pictures of turkeys too,
regular
and other
basis,
stuff.
Even during your work.
We have
session?
seen them recently,
Okay.
yeah. But as far as like technical questions and stuff like that, I'm gonna let my
Has
attorneys
anybody
and
reached
engineers
out to
answer.
the DEC
As
for
part of the secret process, there's a review for any endangered wildlife in the area. And the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service didn't have any come up. The
Well, they
eagle-
also stated, excuse me, in that same document that there has not been a review of this territory to assess that statement and make it valid. Though at this point, they are in agreement, what their clause is, there is no real basis for them to say yes or no. And it is also an environmental assessment, it is not an environmental impact. So it does not need to take certain things into depth where other impacts might be for a greater, more thorough. My question still is, have you notified the DEC that there are eagles and whether they accept this process? And I understand you say it is an industrial, but you are also to understand this is a special use exception. It is not an automatic shoe, and that things must have
Sure.
control. Which
That's,
obviously, if you knew that, you would already not be confronting a road, which I find that you would dismiss our town law by putting something in before you even know it was allowed.
That's right.
So, no offense, I just need to know, and I will finish.
I'm gonna get to that.
Okay, okay, and I know it was a mistake, but you're a businessman with a businessman who knows the process. I find there no excuse.
I don't know the process to everything, that's why I'm hemorrhaging money right now on engineers, attorneys, consultants,
don't make
and
that
other,
a town's
and other
problem.
professionals.
It's
I know,
not our problem.
I know, but that's why I have professionals to help me, because I don't know everything.
Are there many more people who'd like to speak on ASAP?
Excuse me.
Yeah, hold on.
From Montgomery?
Hold on, sir.
Oh, I can answer that.
I'm curious.
I own.
Okay, so may I just finish while we go?
Okay.
Is there an answer to the battery storage, since anywhere in
Go ahead,
the
George.
law I can't locate it, that doesn't mean it's not there? And the tires, I
Battery
understand.
Tires,
Thank you.
the tires that will be taken off will be put in a container that we supplied from the third party, which I believe is gonna be Bob's Tires. They will put a container there, the tires will go in the container, once that container's full, they will take it, replace it with another one.
And it's a completely enclosed container.
Excuse me?
It is a completely enclosed.
Top is
container.
open, the top will be
The top
open.
cannot be open, because according, I'm just helping you with what you don't know. There are vectors in their statement in our rule that talks about tires. And you need to, you know, become aware, not be mean, but you wanna do it right. So you are not allowed to have tires stored in the open because of vectors, that's under our town law.
Of course, it's gonna be open, so throw the tires in there, and then it gets closed with the lid on the container. There's no other way of putting them in there.
So how often will it is, it is inferring that it is basically a full-time enclosure.
Once the tires are thrown in there, it's open, then it gets locked again. It comes with
So
hinges and
each
bolts.
time somebody has 4
Absolutely.
tires, you're gonna open it and close it, so
That's
you
their
can
job.
come and observe this.
That's their job. And as far as the batteries go, the batteries, once they are taken off, they will be put on a pallet, there'll be cardboard there, there'll be a row of batteries, 3 high, with shrink wrap. They will be put in a sea container that's closed. Once we have a load of batteries, that's when the batteries go out. So everything will be enclosed. It's only 3 high that the batteries will go, and be with cardboard, wrapped around with cardboard, and then shrink wrap.
Okay, and is that good for the board, since I can't find any regulations for that?
Yeah, I believe the idea is to keep everything out of the weather as best as possible. And off the ground.
For the batteries?
For the batteries.
They cannot be on the ground.
Scrap.
Hazardous waste.
They cannot be on the ground. The batteries cannot touch the ground.
Right.
Okay.
Okay.
This is tangential and really quick, I didn't get a chance to say it before, but there had been some conversation before about electric car batteries that would be coming in. Electric cars will be accepted at the facility, but those electric cars that are accepted at the gate will not be allowed to have batteries within them. That's gonna be part of the policy. And they will be checked once they're checked in and registered and all that paperwork is done.
They will also be checked again as soon as they're placed on the scale by the weighmaster. So if there was a battery that was in it for an electric car, it would be taken off site and they would be told not to return until that battery was out.
Thank you. And how do we put things on a scale that cannot be driven as stated in the
Excuse me?
a crane?
I couldn't hear you.
Drive on, have the vehicle removed, and then drive back on. Measure the weight difference.
It basically weighs the truck full, right? And then
the whole truck is rolling
yeah,
on
and
the
then it
scale.
weighs the truck
Correct.
empty.
How large is the scale?
Oh, it's 100,000 pounds, right, max?
Lengthwise?
How big? 60 feet?
Oh, 30,
130
30,
feet long.
100.
130 feet
Is it
long.
that long? Yeah.
Okay, I know that I have, and I'm sorry, I don't want to close any more time, but I have been, opportunity to be involved in such scales. And can I ask how they recommend a footing, because I do not believe it's gravel.
It's concrete.
It's on concrete.
There's gravel underneath.
There's
the
gravel underneath, it's
concrete.
not
It's
concrete.
not-
Poured gravel and concrete and laid the scale.
Yeah, but basically the manufacturer of the scale tells you exactly how it needs to be supported.
Correct.
And that, I was wondering, because all I read in the document was when the scale was placed, it was on gravel. That was what we kind of.
No.
No, it's gravel and concrete, and I apologize if that was.
No,
You're-
that's all right. Thank you for your time.
No
Any other
problem.
questions?
And sir, I want to answer your question next, but I think it's good if I just finish this brief intro so everybody knows who we are. So I mean, right now, currently, we've been here for 5 years. We own the property. We have a metal shelving business that we run. It's basically used equipment refurbishing and selling it. You know, we've been in the community for 5 years. A lot of people know us around here, like the hardware store. We do support local business. We're getting into metal recycling now. We started this process in September. It'll be a year. We've been held to the highest standards of compliance. I mean, every regulatory body has been on the property. I've been very open about letting the public come up and see the property and taking them for tours. Steve in particular has been on the property plenty of times, not with me, but with George. We have everything in place as far as compliance and, you know, as far as the oversight on the scale, we're pretty much covered. I mean, I think we've been held to the highest standard. Because there's other bodies of authority that have come in to regulate us besides the town, like DEC, the River Keepers. We had to put a stormwater prevention plan together for them, we did that. So I don't think we missed much. So I want to remind everybody, like, what we're trying to do is supposed to be a good thing. Like, recycling is supposed to be a good thing, you know, reduce, reuse, recycle. You know, I'm just as much of an environmentalist as a lot of the people that live in the town, as far as I don't want my water to be contaminated. I have 3 kids. I own a house in Walden. I own properties. I'm a real estate, you know, owner. I wouldn't call myself a developer, but I own a few residential homes. You know, some of them are in low water lines. I'm worried about my homes being flooded over the next 10 years due to environmental factors that I'm concerned with. So I'm very much in tune with concerns about the environment. And, you know, I just want everybody to know that, you know, we've been taking our time to do things right. And it's been a year, we haven't done any business yet. We'd like to be open as soon as possible so we can start to, you know, recycle some money and bring some money into the business. But we've been patient. And what I want to do is, you know, there's been a lot of negatives and a lot of questions about effects on the environment. I want to give an example of how we clean up the environment. If you go on Google Earth and you look at properties in Walden and Montgomery, you're going to see a lot of people that have stuff in their yard, stuff that's leaking into the ground, stuff that shouldn't be there. This is an example, it's a random example, where this individual has 30 cars or machines or boats, whatever they might be. And it's basically, I can't imagine that maybe 2/3 of these vehicles have to be disabled. There is no way that this person is using all 30 of these vehicles. And if you go online and you look at situations like this is the real plague to the community. It's people that are careless and they're leaving stuff outside, nobody's checking what's out there, and stuff is leaking into the ground. And the function of ASAP will be to clean that up. It's gonna give the community, first of all, open to the public, so anybody can come in with a dishwasher or an old car and they can bring it, they can get paid to recycle it. We're not keeping any of this stuff, we're simply a transfer station for the mill. So everything gets processed and it gets sent to the mill. The mill will do the actual shredding. We're not gonna be a shredder. We're more of a, basically what the scrap business would call a transfer yard. Or a, what's this? Yeah, the transfer station, essentially. And the whole reason behind this is because we're already recycling so much metal from the shelving business that this was supposed to be a natural revenue stream, but it's also good for the community. During cleanups, we're gonna put containers out so people can throw their metal scraps away. And once again, we're open to the public. So I think that we're gonna have a lot of good impact on the environment. I don't think anybody's really focusing on the good. And situations like these can be cleaned up. It can be cleaned up by people, being encouraged to take stuff and bring it to us and get paid to recycle. Or it could be encouraged by the town enforcing, being a little tougher on people that just like to let stuff sit in their, on their properties and basically rot. So, yeah.
Thank you. Hold on.
Excuse me, okay? Because we had tax and everything.
I'm
To
not-
my husband, to
I-
my son.
I'm speaking in
you
general.
and-
I'm
I'm
not-
sorry, but you sent a drone over our property
Not true.
twice already.
No, not true.
Yes, and that's illegal to do that.
This
And
is-
then you
this is-
find,
this
then
is
you
my
tell us
property.
what we have on our property.
Well, I didn't
The
mention
only
your
right-
name, but now that you mentioned it, this is your property.
Well,
This is
where'd
your
you get
property.
that? Where'd you get that?
I took this picture with my drone from my airspace in my silo. So it's very simple. It's very simple to turn a camera and look down and see what's going
All
on.
you have for that to do?
Please, let's,
Hey,
You
well,
have
You don't need a
You don't need
permit
a
to
permit.
take a photo, drone or otherwise
You
from your
invade my
property
privacy.
line.
I didn't invade your
You
privacy.
invade my privacy.
I was over my airspace.
Yeah. Well, you invade my privacy. And you try
Do you
to
have a
turn
permit?
it
Do you have a
on.
permit for the legal apartments that you're renting in
Excuse
your
me,
place?
we don't. Excuse
All right,
me.
guys,
I grew
all right.
up in a communism, and this is what we are, is going to. The US is gonna be communism because that's what they said. The average people, they couldn't get ahead unless they got paid off to the
take it down, turn it
communists.
around.
And I can't take any pictures. And I grew up in there, and people disappeared. My uncle's cousin disappeared because they spoke up. My mother was escorted to vote with 2 KGB with guns to vote. And this is what we're gonna be coming into America. We came in 56 to a better life. My father brought all of us here. And he always thought America is the best.
It is the
And
best.
we escaped. I was a teenager. A Russian was shooting at us. If we don't stop, they're gonna shoot us and kill us. Now, what right do you to have the drone over my property?
I wasn't over your property.
Yes, you are. You just see that, you just said that.
I was not over
I
your
was in my
property.
bedroom, I'm sorry, I was in my bedroom this morning, and all I hear is a Big Ben and crush. And I called Stephen up, please come up, I'm upset, I'm upset.
Nobody worked today.
We didn't
though.
work today.
There was nobody on the property.
Yes, you did, you did.
I was in Lake George.
I don't know, but somebody did. Somebody did, because I'm not lying.
Listen, I respect everything. Yeah.
we got a lot to go on, please.
Please
Thanks.
not to harass any of us anymore.
Is there anyone else at?
Thank you
Thank you,
very
Steve.
much.
Yeah, we're done. We're
Thank
gonna
you.
extend this hearing out. We're owed some information yet. We're gonna be terribly busy on the 26th. So why don't we go to the first meeting in September, September 9th, 2019, at 7:45? And we'll continue the hearing then, okay? All right, do I have a motion? I'll entertain a motion